Howdy everybody, Andy Nolte here, the Space Cowboy, rickety, rockety, roppity, ready for a cavalcade of funness with another KR. Get excited, this one's a top 5 things that are wrong with the Church of Scientology. And this one's what I like to call constructive criticism. I'm not like those Scientology haters that just whinge all the time about the Church of Scientology, but they just use the word Scientology so everyone thinks that Scientology in general is crap and think that Andy Nolte is weird for being a Scientologist. But anyway, I specifically say the Church of Scientology. So these are the top 5 things that are wrong with the Church of Scientology. Get excited, I think you'll like it. These are big ones. If the church fixed these problems, then they will be booming and be doing a lot better. Because it makes me feel sad to see their churches empty. Even though I disagree with the way the church runs and stuff, I at least want them to have some people in there. You know what I mean? It was really kind of interesting. I had a dream the other day that I was at the LA Advanced Org, even though I'd never been there. I had a dream that I was there and I was getting regged and they didn't know that I'd left the church and I was pretending, I guess, like I'm still involved with the church or something, but I was just there and I was saying how I didn't want to do services and stuff, or I didn't have the money to do the course or whatever. And I was looking around and I was like, oh, this is so sad. It's so empty. And I'm like almost the only one here. And yeah, it was just sad. You know what I mean? To see this whole movement, this whole cool thing that L. Ron Hubbard started, just get taken over by the government and bad people, and then just get run into the toilet. You know, being that it's corrupted, I don't want it to be huge, obviously, but I at least just want it to, you know, have some course rooms that are full. Just have some course rooms that are actually full, you know, and that's it, you know? Otherwise, I just feel sorry for all the people who are involved, because it's really obvious to them that they're wasting their life and that it's a con when it's empty. You know what I mean? Like, at least want to get them some wins to help people and stuff. Anyway, so somehow I hope someone in the church sees this video, because these are really good ideas that can help improve the church. And I hope in Theta Land somehow people who are powerful within the church pick up on these ideas, and they correct them. And this is also things that somebody who has an indie org can be aware of, like, that they shouldn't do, okay? And it can help them as well. So here's a top 5. So number 5, I put the prices. I said, I think that the church needs to lower its prices. It is just too much. Like, it's kind of, for a normal Class 5 org, it's kind of like around $200 an hour for a session. I think that's a bit too much. I think it really should be cut in half by about 50%. I understand it can't be totally cheap, but I think they need to probably charge more like $100 an hour, and then this would really help for all the people who are involved to be able to afford to do Scientology, because a lot of them just can't afford it. It's basically, this is how you run a business. It's real common sense, right? So let's say you're selling burgers, right? You don't want to sell them like $1 each, because then you just won't make any money and it's a waste of time. But you don't want to sell the burgers for $30 or $50 each, because people just won't go because it's just too much. You have to find the nice medium, and I feel like the church isn't at that nice medium. It's charging too much, and it makes sense because it seems like the upper management don't actually want people to do Scientology. So it makes sense why they'll charge so much for it, because when it seemed to have gotten taken over in the 80s, when it got taken over from Hubbard and people who were close to him, that's one of the things that they did as well, that they did crank the prices up like heavily. So anyway, so I think if it was more like $100 an hour, it'd be a lot more reasonable. And a lot of people for therapy sessions, all these other sorts of things, they charge something like $100 an hour. So I think that would be a lot more reasonable. And it would really help get people doing courses and being in the course rooms and that sort of stuff. So although they're not getting $200 an hour from Joe Blow, now they'll be getting $100 an hour from 4 Joe Blows. Do you know what I mean? So they end up getting $400 as opposed to just $100. Do you see what I mean? More people come in, so it actually works out all right. Okay, number four thing the Church of Scientology that's wrong with them, that they need to fix up, is the donations thing. So there's sort of two things to this. There's their donation events, like the IS events, which they were having too many of, and it was just scaring people away from Scientology, and like people who were involved with the church who liked it, but they just didn't want to go in because they didn't want to get asked for money, and they didn't want to go to the events because they knew they'll just get regged heaps. And it was just ridiculous. It was just too much of it was going on. Firstly, I didn't even know if Hubbard approved of these things. But I know for sure that he wouldn't approve of the way they were doing it when I was involved. Like, I remember in like 2012, it was just like, whoa, it was just like every few weeks, it was like another event and they were trying to raise like 50 grand. It was just like, it was just milking the shit out of the members. And then they couldn't afford auditing and stuff and going up the bridge because they were just had huge credit card debts. And it was just, it was no good. It was no good. So, and it really scared people away. It really did. So if they got rid of the donations thing, they would find more people would be going to the church, more people would be hanging out there, more people could afford courses. And the whole IIS donation thing, it just milks the current church of money, and instead of that money going towards bills at the current church and staff at their local church, it just is like a funnel of money straight up to upper management. And I think it's wrong. I just think it's wrong. And I'm not totally sure. I don't believe what they say they're spending the money on, where they say it's paying for helping things and that sort of stuff. And I don't really believe that. I think it's questionable. But even if it is, then I don't know. I just think it's no good. They need to get rid of this donation thing. Okay, number 3. This one's a big one. And this one's why a lot of people end up leaving the church. Right? More so than the prices and donations. It's strict ethics. A lot of people get pissed off with strict ethics and strict church and the rules and stuff, and they end up getting into a condition where they don't quite like the way the church is treating them. And then, of course, they talk to people and they hit the internet and they find out about independent Scientology, and they find out about some atheist website that says Scientology is not scientific, even though it's not true, and they go, oh, Chris Shelton, oh, atheist, oh, Scientology is googly-doogly, oh, it's not any good, oh, and then they suddenly, they become a Scientology hater, and then they're like, oh my god, the church ripped me off, and it was outrageous, and anyway, because there's certain people, like with their tone levels and stuff, when they leave Scientology, you can sort of predict what category they'll fall into. Like, you can sort of tell if someone might become an indie, or you can sort of tell if someone might become like this staunch atheist that talks about critical thinking and shit, and like he doesn't even understand critical thinking. And anyway, but the reason why they end up looking into what's really going on in the church and end up leaving the church is because of the strict ethics. The church pisses them off, basically. Like, it says, it's some people, it might be like they might have a divorce or something, and then the church will say, you need to do this. Like, the ethics part of the church will be like, you need to do this, and the person will be like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? That isn't good for me. And so it's just a disagreement, and so they're pissed off. So then they hit the internet, they start finding out more about how the church is screwed up. Like, for me, that was kind of what happened with me, in that I sort of did like a sec check and stuff, and then things came up in the sec check, and they basically wanted me to sign away my freedoms. They wanted me to say on the piece of paper I would no longer do A, B, and C. And I thought, well, where does Hubbard say that? And also, I'm free to do whatever I want. Like, I'm not going to let some big church control my life and tell me what I am to do, what I'm going to do. I just didn't like that idea of actually, like, they wanted me literally to sign a piece of paper and promise that I wouldn't, like, one thing they wanted me to promise was that I wouldn't look up Scientology on the internet. They actually said that. And I thought, whoa, like, that's a big piece of my freedom, And I didn't like that. I was like, I didn't like this control level, because in the strict church, I don't know why, that something happened with ethics, but they seem to have this attitude, the ethics officers, where they think that they can just tell you what to do with your life, and that they're like superior to you, and that they're like all powerful, and they have the right to just like come to your house and just like seriously, like they're like the Scientology police. And it's just ridiculous. Like, it scares people off, especially if you come from like not a Scientology family or anything, and you go into the church and you're like, whoa, this is really strict. Like, it sort of hits you. Like, it's really, it really puts people off. They really don't like it. Like, and it's not like the church, like, the ethics is supposed to be there for, like, you go there and you need help and stuff. And, if someone's smoking crack on the weekend, obviously you'd be strict and say you can't smoke crack on the weekend. You know what I mean? But they start intruding into your life, and they start, like, they just push it too far. They just push it too far, and it's no good. So they have to start really chilling out with the whole ethics thing and being a lot cooler and friendlier, the way it was more in the 60s and stuff. And even in the 80s, when it was corrupted, right? The church was corrupted. They were still a lot more freer than they are now. Like, seriously, in the 80s, they were like there was some, I heard there was some like strippers that were on staff and stuff, and it was just a lot more, and there was some people who were doing yoga, and it was just a lot more like freer and stuff. And like now it's just like, it's like totally, it's like they want you to literally be like a mini version of like Tom Cruise or some shit, and they want you to just be this perfect person. And also part of the reason for that as well is the fact that it's quieter these days, so that the staff literally don't have as many things to do, so they can start nitpicking. They can start spending more time telling people off for things that aren't even really that naughty. Serious. Anyway, that's number 3. So number 2, the second main reason why things are wrong in the Church of Scientology. And it was hard picking this one, because it was really hard deciding if this one's going to be number 1 or number 2. And I was really like, eh. And this one, I feel like it should be number 1, but something is just saying, no, this should be number 2. This is a really big one. This is out tech. This is squirreling that the church is doing. And I put it at number 2. I haven't put it at number 1. But anyway, I put this as number 2, out tech. So the church is literally squirreling the tech. And that's where I sort of worked out that the upper management was like infiltrated by bad guys or the government or something, because they pretend like RTC is protecting the tech, and David Miscavige acts like he's upholding standard tech and stuff, but he's apparently actually squirreling. Now, what you can do is you've got to get your hands on the old basic books and then compare them to the new versions of the basic books, and what you'll find is that good whole chapters have been removed from these books. I'm not kidding. And also, some sentences here and there have been removed, and some words have been changed, like switched and stuff, and not for the better. These words haven't been fixed up for the better. Because the whole Dave Miscavige, with his whole basic books thing, he pushed the whole idea that the basic books had been corrupted by SPs in the past, and he was correcting them and stuff. But if you look at it, he made the books worse. Seriously, check them out. The data's there. Just look for yourself. I mean, I should do a video on the squirreling and read you sentences that are the old versions and the new versions. And the new versions, it doesn't matter how many times you clear the word, it just does the paragraph doesn't make sense. You're just like, what the hell? They just added in some new hard word. This is definite cases of squirreling. Like, when you see the evidence, you're like, they're definitely squirreling. So that puts people off. And also, they dropped whole books. So when they released the basics, they stopped printing, I think, Have You Lived Before This Life? And I think there's some type of Dianetics book, I think, from 1975 that they just completely dropped. It's Dianetic something, but it's gone. It's like they don't print it anymore, and it's just like, whoa. And there's also, this is outrageous actually. They've taken out like sentences out of lectures. Like I think it's PDC lecture number 21, I think, where it says something about Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard was basically delivering a lecture in 1952, and he was saying how Scientology could fall into the bad guys' hands or get taken over or something. It's exactly what actually happened to the church. And L. Ron Hubbard was talking about it and saying, hey, watch out, this is what can happen. And in that paragraph, I think it said nobody should have a monopoly on Scientology or something. Anyway, they deleted a sentence out of that, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that. They deleted the specific sentence because that sentence would wake up church members. If they had that, church members had the real PDC with that original line, and they would read it, and they'd start to look around and go, whoa, hold on a second. Is our church can get corrupted and get infiltrated? Or like, really? Wow, like, whoa, maybe David Miscavige is not good. But they took out that sentence. It's like they did it for a reason, so that people wouldn't work out what really happened and stuff. It's really deep. But there's many more instances, like, for example, that the basic books, there's squirreling, right, that went on that every Scientologist can know about, but there's actually squirreling that you can only know if you're like heavily tech trained and if you're on like the OT levels. Like, for example, apparently in the 80s, they literally got rid of the good OT levels. This was after the government took it over, and this is what the evidence is indicating, okay? So the government took it over, and they took out the good OT levels that helped people develop the ability to remote view, which the governments were experimenting with, and they didn't want anyone else, like the CIA and shit, they didn't want other people having this remote viewing technology, right? Look up remote viewing. It's true. It's amazing. And so they took those OT levels and then they replaced them with these new OT levels, and it's like new OT4, new OT5, new OT6 or whatever. And so what they replaced it with was they basically they basically just filled it in with crap, like as in, like they got one OT level and they drew it out to be 3 OT levels, like they broke it into parts. You know what I mean? And so so these new OT levels are just shit, and they're no good. And I don't think they've ever replaced the OT levels with the original ones. And I think you can go into the church and look at their bridge, and it still says new OT 4, 5, 6, 7, because it's like, what the hell happened to the original, you know? So this is outrageous squirreling, because in the 70s, people doing these original OT levels were really getting damn funky and damn spiritual. And this is why someone like Chris Shelton can go, Scientology never produced an OT that has like psychic abilities. Psychic abilities don't exist. They're a load of crap. And it's just like, Chris, you don't know what happened to the church and shit. Like, go and find these people from the 70s who could do these funky OT abilities, who actually did the real OT levels, and you'll actually see some funky stuff. You know what I mean? But don't go to someone who has been involved with the corrupt church for years, who's done these bullshit OT levels that are new OT levels that are fake and crappy. No wonder why they've had no case gain, and they're PDS to the church and have to pay all this money to the church and donations, and they're stressed and their ethics is pissing them off in the church, so they never really get to advance spiritually. It's like, duh. No wonder why they're not OT, you know what I mean? And Chris will be like, see, look how bad that person there got up to OT7 and they haven't done anything yet. Scientology's crap. And it's just like, Chris, firstly, say the word Church of Scientology's crap, and also say that that person didn't even do the proper OT levels. Anyway, basically, so I know I talk a lot about Chris, but he's just the perfect example, because he epitomizes these Scientology haters, and he says all their ideas in some perfect summary. And he's just a perfect paradigm of a Scientology hater. So when I criticize him, I'm criticizing all the Scientology haters. Anyway, so it's just like Scientology is a complex thing. That's why you can't just talk. That's why someone who can't go on TV and say Scientology is crap. Can you believe they believe this and mention something from the OT levels? Because it's just like, whoa, these are really complex, deep things that you don't know about, and you need to have properly explained. And when you take them out of context, they sound crazy. Okay, I agree, but it's the truth. You know, like, as in, it's not as crazy as what you think, but if you're really dumb and you look at it from the outside, from a dumb point of view, I understand how it sounds crazy, okay? But these sorts of things, it's kind of like opening up a maths book and reading out really high algorithm maths and reading a paragraph and turning to someone and going, see, that sounds like gobbledygook to me. That's all gobbledygook. And then everyone goes, yeah, that's gobbledygook. Whereas it's like, it's actually good quality maths, but it's just like you're totally not ready for it because it's advanced. And someone literally did this. I literally saw, I think it was that stupid idiot James Randi, who's like a pedophile, evil SP. James Randi is the biggest SP. Like, he tries to attack psychic abilities and stuff and religious people and stuff. And he's paid to promote drugs by the big pharma and stuff. He is what's wrong with the world, right? But he's such a good con man. People think he's this nice, funny old man. Oh, he's the amazing Randy with the magic and shit. He's just a bullshit guy. He opened up a book, basically, of Scientology, right? And it was like advanced Scientology stuff. And you can only understand if you're a Scientologist studying it for years and a trained auditor and stuff. And he read out a paragraph and he reads out and he goes, blah, 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 reads out and he goes, see? That's gobbledygook. Scientology is retarded. Scientology is ridiculous. Did you just see that? That doesn't make any sense. And it's like, yeah. And their other person who was there who wasn't a Scientologist was like, yeah. And it's just like, well, obviously it doesn't make any sense because you don't understand it. You haven't studied Scientology. This is advanced shit. You know? And as a Scientologist, you're just sitting there like thinking this guy's an idiot. And I don't really have any hope for someone like James Randi, but what I have hope for is the average normal person who's watching this and they hear it and they go, oh yeah, Scientology must be crap, and then they don't ever get into Scientology. And they're missing out on something that's really cool. Just because of some idiot thing by James Randi that's a moron, and he's just plucked out high-level stuff that like you would never understand for someone who's new, and it's got fancy Scientology words in it that you don't know what they are unless you use a Scientology dictionary to look them up. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Anyway, so the OT levels were changed, and there's also been changes that have been made that haven't been announced publicly, because there was changes at GAT1, there was tech changes at GAT1, tech changes at GAT2, and also mention this as well. If you don't believe that the church is squirreling, then why do they have to bring out a GAT2? Because GAT1 was supposed to be, I don't know if you were around in 1996 when they released GAT1, but apparently it was advertised as being perfect standard tech. The tech's been fixed up. It's absolutely perfect. It's all standard now. And actually, it was a complete lie. It was actually the opposite. It was going away from what Hubbard wrote and it was squirreling more. And it really ruined Scientology, really messed things up. And then GAT2 came out and he goes, now we've got the answers, GAT2 is fantastic. And he didn't say anything about being wrong with GAT1. He just said how the tech wasn't perfect yet. And I got sucked into it because I didn't know anything about the history when I was involved. And I was like, oh, this is great, we've got new tech now. And I thought GAT1 was just where they released some drill simulator or something. I didn't realize GAT1 was advertised as being the correct standard tech. And like, it's just outrageous. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is when GAT2 got released, basically Miscavige and the church and RTC were basically admitting, hey, for the past like 50 years, we've been delivering out tech. With that release of GAT2, they were saying everything we've been doing for at least the past 20 years was out tech. They openly admitted it. So the question is, do you trust them with GAT2, or in 20 years' time are they going to release GAT3 and say, oh, everything we've been doing in the past was out tech? Like, it's just ridiculous. They've definitely been doing out tech. But anyway, they've been doing actual changes that aren't... See, the basic books and GAT1, GAT2 were openly announced, but they've done squirreling that's been secret, that hasn't been openly announced. Like, literally, they've done things where they would... where they would delete like some stuff out of some materials, and then what they would do is they would ask everyone to hand in their old binders or whatever, or course packs, and then release the new ones. And basically, it just wouldn't be a big public announcement, and then they'll release the new ones. But the difference is that there's a deleted sentence in that course pack. And I remember when someone was telling a story on the internet how somehow someone had an old course pack that wasn't the altered version, and the new version's been altered and had some sentence deleted, and it had a really important thing deleted, you know what I mean? And when the church found out that this person had this old version of a bulletin with the actual true LRH writing on it, that person suddenly became a big target, and they needed to get that bulletin off that person and need to shut the person up. So they quickly denounced the person as being... I'm not kidding. They quickly denounced the person as being an SP. You know what I mean? Like they knew instantly. Okay, bam, this person's onto us and what we've done. We have to denounce him as SP. So they denounced him as SP straight away, and they also gave him some reverse auditing. And I think the goal of the reverse auditing was to piss the guy off so that he would punch them or do something unsavory, so that then the church could say, can you believe this Joe Blow did this, he's outrageous? Or it was actually to cave the person in so that then they were no longer functioning that well in life and could expose the church. It's like they were no longer a threat. I actually think it was more because they wanted the person to punch him, because apparently the auditor actually said to the dude, why don't you just hit me or something? Like, obviously, because the guy wasn't reacting the way they wanted him to react. They wanted him to punch him. And he wasn't punching them. So they just said, why don't you punch me or whatever. And anyway, but they ended up making up lies about him in his SP declare and stuff, and ended up declaring him. But that person who was actually a dedicated, good church member, it happened in about the year 1999. When that happened, his jaw nearly dropped, because the truth of the situation, the church is actually right. The top corrupted and not standard tech at all. Like, that was when he was like, whoa, I thought I was doing a good thing by telling the RTC about this changes to the tech and stuff, and it just shocked him. Like, I can't believe how corrupt the church is, because it really is shocking. It's just like, whoa. Like, when I was involved with the church, when I found out about the squirreling, it was just like, whoa. I was like, what the hell's going on with these basic books? Like, it was a real shock. It was like, whoa. Because the brainwashing when you're involved with the church is so heavy. Like, RTC's good. RTC's good. Miscavige is standard tech. Miscavige is awesome. Like, it really makes you think that they really care about Scientology and that they are standard tech, but it's just a load of crap. It's amazing. Anyway, so there's been secret changes to the OT levels that you don't hear about. And they've been made and to other parts of Scientology, little deletions and stuff, and they've pulled in the old materials and burnt them and released the new ones. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Apparently the whole SRD isn't even standard tech. I don't know the truth about that, but apparently it's not standard tech. The whole SRD. And that came out with GAT too. I don't know. And I heard recently that the Melbourne org had been making a bunch of clears, like heaps more than what they used to. In like 2011 or something, it was literally only 2 or 3 clears in the whole year were made, right? Or 2 or even 1. And then GAT2 got released, and suddenly they're pumping out like they pumped out like 20 clears in 1 year, because that was like a boom, because people were coming back on services. And now they've done like 50 in not even a year, and it's just like, what the hell's going on? It's a lot of clears that they're making. And I noticed with GAT2, it's easier to achieve the state of clear, but I don't really know if people are really achieving the state of clear. I don't know if they've quickied the state of clear, but that is something that's very possible with this GAT2, is that they've just quickied the state of clear. So they have events where they go, we made 50 clears and it costs this much to go clear, it's cheaper now, and it's all great and stuff, but you don't realise that the quality of the tech is just shit. I know that when I did the grades, I felt like my grades were quickied. So, I don't know, I just don't trust the church. It's wild. Okay, so you ready for number 1? The number one thing wrong with the Church of Scientology. I know people will be outraged that I said that it wasn't the outtake, because the outtake, I feel like it should be number one, but I was just like, nah, I'm not going to put that at the number one. I'll tell you what the number one thing wrong with the Church of Scientology, because this just creates so many problems everywhere, and it leads to outtake as well. The number one thing wrong with the Church of Scientology is stat pushing. That is it. That is huge. That causes so many problems. Stat pushing is just ridiculous, and it's just stupid. People need to slow down, not so much care about their stat. Worry about it in the long term, but don't worry about it this week. That's the whole thing. People are like, I've got to get my stats up by Thursday. I've got to get them up by Thursday. I've got to get them up by Thursday. So they never sit down and institute something that means that their stats will be really high in 6 months' time. Because then someone comes along and goes, what's your stat this week? Your stat's 0? What do you mean 0? And you go, well, I was planning on something, like on some program that's going to be really good in 6 months' time. They go, you can't have 0 stats. You have to have some high stats this week. And so then the person, instead of putting in good long-term plans, just does some little shitty thing to try and get the stat up for this Thursday. It causes a lot of problems. Like, it causes supervisors going over to the students and forcing them to stay back in the course room, and the student doesn't want to be in the course room. And then it forces the salesman to try and sell the student more courses when he doesn't really need the courses. And it forces the people to run around the building like nutcases. And it literally sends the whole Church of Scientology a bit batshit crazy. Like, seriously, stat pushing is ridiculous. Like, for example, with their ideologue thing, they will set ridiculous targets. And I remember watching them, and it was just like they were all like working like nutcases and dogs to get the place opened by, like, the one in Melbourne was opened on like the 20th of January or something. And it was like all they had to do was make it 1 month later, and all these problems wouldn't have happened. And it's just like, is it really going to cause that much problems if they make it a month later? So everyone's working like a nutcase. We've got to have it done by this date. And I remember seeing this Sea Org guy who was helping with the construction. It was one of these ones that were from like LA and stuff, and obviously used to the hardcore Scientology. And I remember seeing him yell at someone, and he was like screaming his head off. And this was like just before the day of the opening. And I remember thinking, shit, like, see how much problems this deadline that we have to open up on the 20th of January is causing? Like, it's just like he has to work around like a nutcase, and people were doing all-nighters to get the building ready on time, and they pretty much didn't finish the building on time. Like, there's still minor construction that needs to get made to the building, the ideologue, after, that went on for the next few months after. And it's just like, all you had to do is make it a bit later, and it causes so much problem. And I experience this all the time with my work. It's one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned in time. Don't set yourself crazy high targets. Like, I know LH said set high targets or something like that, but I think he means positive, upbeat, like a sort of challenge, not like we're opening the org this week, or you're going to finish your course tomorrow night. Like, just a crazy, like, sometimes in the course room, you'll start a course and you'll go in, you study it, and then the next day you go in, and then they go, oh, okay, you're going to get done today. And you're like, dude, I just started the course. Like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, I'm setting high targets. And it's just like, you're setting ridiculously unrealistic targets. You might as well tell me to be like, the moon's made of cheese or something just ridiculous, because it's just like, what you're saying is just unreality, ridiculous targets. It's just stupid. And so it filters through the whole of Scientology, causes all these problems. I remember when, this is why I can go on for ages about this, because I remember when you get people who are rushed through their auditing to get their stat for that week, for someone to get their stat, or someone rushed through a course they quickly have to read to get their stat for that week. And it's just like, no, you need to take your time and do things properly, you know? So the stat pushing is just evil and terrible. It's really bad. Trying to think of an example, but it causes so many problems. It causes staff members to argue with each other, and then people to be stressed and chilled, and it charges your case up. It just keys you in. Like, if you want to key me in, for example, with me and my day job, if you want to key me in, all you have to do is you have to just fill it up with too much work that I can't complete in that one day, and I'm going to be like this, rushing to each job. Oh, I'm going to get this done. No, I'm going to get this done, and then suddenly you walk and you sleep, and you're like, oh shit, oh crap, I'm in a hurry, and you go, oh, I dropped my phone behind, I left my, oh my god, because you're just like this suddenly when you have to do it really fast, and you're like, oh, it just sends you PTS. It's ridiculous. So church, just wake up and stop. And anyone, this is something you can apply in your life. It's really important. Don't do things in these manic, rushed ways because it just causes problems, right? Not only does it mean that you end up doing things not as good, right? You also end up having accidents, and also this is the worst thing of it all. It keys you into your case. It makes you angry and stressed, and suddenly, like, you're in traffic, and instead of just being sitting there in traffic being chilled, you're like, you sit in traffic, you're like, I gotta get there by this time, and you're pissed off, and then, like, it is no good. It's not a good way to live at all. And there's something in Scientology called goals, problems, mass, and I think you'll learn about it a bit on the OT levels, and I think actually might be a little bit of confidential data, but it's totally fine for me to tell you about it. It's not outrageous stuff or anything. So this is just goals, problems, mass, and it basically means you have a goal, and then you hit a problem, and then it causes mass, and so it keys you in. So you have the goal, let's say to get your stat up that week, and then there's no one there to sell a book to, like let's say your job's selling books to, and so you have a problem, you're like, I can't sell any books, and then you have mass, and you're keyed in, you're suddenly pissed off. So it's this cycle of goals, problems, mass, and it just charges up your bank. It literally creates your bank and just keys you in. It's horrible, right? And this is why church members can be involved with the church forever and not really get much case gain. And Chris Shelton will say, the church members don't have any case gain, and it's a load of crap. And it's just like, because every day they're having a goals, problem, mass going on, and so then they might get some wins from auditing, right? And get rid of mass and get rid of case, but then the next day they have some drama with getting some stat up, and they have a goals, problems, mass, and they just key that mass back, like they create more mass again or key it back in again, so they just get keyed in again, and they go on a continuous cycle of it's actually like one step forward and two steps back. So in the end of it, you get someone who's been involved with the church for like 20 years, who actually is unhappier than before they got into Scientology, which is just absurd. And it's because of this goals, problems, mass, and this stat pushing stuff, you know? It's totally the wrong way to go about things. It's totally the wrong way. Like, for example, let's say you want to sign someone up for staff. Well, if you're stat pushing that week, it's like, by Thursday, I've got to have someone signed up for staff. I've got to have someone on staff. And you're really, really stressed about it. Well, you might end up signing someone up for staff who can't really be on staff, but you had to get them to sign, and you got them to sign, and then they can't really remain on staff. So they only remain on staff for like 1 month, and they fill out paperwork, and they get the uniform, and they're basically effort. And then after a month, they're gone because they never really could have joined staff in the first place, and they only joined because they were so heavily pressured into signing in the first place. And that whole cycle was a waste of time, and it was stupid, and it only happened because the person in the first place was stat pushing to get someone to join staff. It is so stupid, and it happens in so many areas of the church, in so many posts. Everyone's doing it. Everywhere it's stat pushing, and this birthday game is just stupid. It doesn't work. I haven't seen anywhere where the birthday game works. I don't know if LRH created it. I think it came out after the church got taken over by the bad guys. But also, maybe it does work if it's done right. But however they're calculating the birthday game, it's just stupid, because basically it means that people get their stat up, the org gets its stats up and works really well for like a year, gets its stats up, and then they go terrible after that, and then their stats drop, and then they rise back up to a reasonable level, and then suddenly in that rise they win the birthday game because they're coming from a really shit level. So it's not even that they should win the birthday game, they should be considered this fantastic org. It's just because they're coming from such a shit level. It's just ridiculous. There's something really wrong with the birthday game in the way it's calculated, but I just noticed that Melbourne run it like 2 times when I was involved with the church, and the org wasn't full. And you look around, you're like, we won the birthday game, and so we're like considered at the moment like the best org on the planet. Like, this is just stupid. Like, it's really dumb. It's just this big stat pushing thing, and then it collapses for like 1 or 2 years, and then suddenly everyone goes and does a big stat push again, and the stats are just like this. And if you look at the stats of the church ever since the 80s, it's like this, and then gradually just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Seriously, it's ridiculous. So that's number one reason, stat pushing. It is horrible. Don't do it. Don't do it with your life. I don't think you should apply it with your life, because you just key yourself in and you just cause problems. You don't want to be stressed like that. You don't want to be like, I got to get my stats. You got to be, you got to enjoy life and play the game, and you got to set like a target. Like, so play a game like maybe like, I want to make $2,000 this week or whatever. But don't have it like, I've got to make 4,000 this week and I really got to make it, and really stress yourself. Like, keep it chilled, Like, I remember someone was telling me how they, it sounded like they were doing a bit of stat pushing with their work, and it just ended up meaning that they were stressed all the time, and they started getting into drinking alcohol to chill them out. And it's just so stupid, because it's just like, you're just keying yourself in by stat pushing. It's just like, just don't stat push. It's just... Anyway, so those are the 5 things. I'll recap. Number 5 is lower the prices. Number 5 is lower the prices. Number 4 is get rid of the donations. Number 3 is, or don't force people to donate. Number 3 is get rid of strict ethics. Number 2 is actually follow LRH and don't do outtech. Number 1 is stat pushing, the biggest one. Horrible, horrible, horrible thing. It makes people not want to walk into the church. It makes them like just Scientology a whole stress thing, and this whole Thursday at 2 p.m. thing is just stupid. So that's it. That's my top 5 things wrong with the Church of Scientology. I hope you liked it. Continue to listen to the podcast. Thanks for listening.